Me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In the absence of the clerk, Jeff Zolfel is going to take over, so if you want to take the roll.
Trustee Spurling.
Here.
Trustee Lee.
Yeah.
Trustee Hines. Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes, here.
All right, we have a quorum this evening. Moving on to item 4, public participation. If there's any member of the public that's here this evening that wishes to address the board, now would be your time. Feel free to come up to the podium. Generally, it's a 2-minute opportunity. If you can state your name, write down your address, and...
Do you have a sheet of roll?
You got to turn it on. There you go.
Hi, my name is Simi Marisick. I really enjoyed the cemetery walk. I think it would be a good idea to take a walk around downtown Montgomery and learn about all the historical buildings.
Thank you. That may or may not be the youngest person that's ever addressed the board.
True.
And I think that's an excellent idea, and Denny might be able to speak to this, but if you can bring this up at the next HPC meeting, and they can talk about that? Does that work? Okay. Go ahead.
You might want to bend that back up. Thank you. My name is Mary McGuire, and I live at 311 Jefferson Street. And I just came here tonight to voice my support of your discussion for the Railroad Quiet Zone study. I've lived on Railroad and Jefferson Street for about 22 years. And when we moved in, we know there's noise, and that's to be expected, and we all have come to just kind of tune it out. But what's kind of nice in 22 years' time, and probably going forward, there's been progress made, I'm sure, in what we could possibly do to make us have a solution to maybe reduce some of the noise. And so I'm asking you that during the study, if you could, help us find perhaps maybe keep your options open as to what might be able to happen for quiet zones down the road. I think with the new crossing especially, it's probably a good opportunity to take a look at it again and just see if there is anything we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Is there anybody else that wishes to address the board this evening? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. We're going to move on to item C first, the introduction of Sergeant Jason Stransky. And with that, I'll turn it over to the Chief of Police, Dan Myers.
Thank you, Village President, Board of Trustees. Tonight, I'd like to introduce our newest Patrol Sergeant, Jason Stransky. Jason has been a member of the Police Department since March of 2003. Prior to Montgomery, Jason worked for the Illinois Department of Corrections. Jason also holds a bachelor's degree from Aurora University. He graduated in 1997. Jason has been acting sergeant for the midnight shift since January of 2013. Jason is currently assigned to the midnight shift. He has off on Sunday, Monday, so tonight is his day off. Jason has been a leader in DUI enforcement and has a solid reputation for testifying in court. Jason is a lead field training officer, and he will be supervising that program very soon. Jason is a member of the ILEAS Mobile Field Force and is one of our firearms instructors. Jason lives in Yorkville with his wife, Stacy, and his newborn Tillman, 9 months old. And also tonight in the audience is Jason's parents, Karen and Frank Stransky. Hey, Jason, hold on. Matt will come up and swear you in. Okay. Do that first. Welcome.
Congratulations. It's about time. Congratulations, sir.
to swear you in real quick. Want to go out there? Go ahead. Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Jason Snansky,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
to uphold the Constitution of the State of United States of America
to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and to perform the duties of police sergeant
those lights.
Yeah.
You can make them click.
All right, we'll go ahead and move on. Move back to item B, which is the introduction of Maintenance Worker 1, Mark Wolf. And with that, turn it over to the Director of Public Works, Mike Bubens.
Thank you, President Brawley. Tonight, I'd like to introduce our newest maintenance worker, Mark Wolf. Mark's been with us about a month now. He's jumped right into things. Mark comes from the family business, B.J. Wolf and Sons Construction, so he's got quite a bit of experience that he's bringing with him to the Public Works Department. He's focused a lot of his past time on concrete work, carpentry, work scheduling, and customer service, which is a huge part of any small business, and Mark's pretty good at that. I'm sure that'll come in handy here in Montgomery. He has a Class A CDL, which is a higher level of CDL licensing than we normally require for our drivers. So Mark also brings with him a large amount of snow plowing experience working for B.J. Wolf. They do contractual snow plowing for other communities, a larger community to the north of us in particular. So we're looking forward to having Mark get behind the wheel of a snowplow truck and jump right in. So Mark attended Aurora Catholic High School in Aurora, graduated, not just attended. We'll give you credit for that. and attended Waubonsee Community College. Pleased to introduce Mark Wolf.
That's nice. Welcome aboard. Welcome. Congratulations. Welcome. Welcome aboard.
All right, moving on. I do have an item D to read off a proclamation this evening. It's Kick Week, Kindness in Canelan. So I'll read this and then I'll entertain a motion to approve. Whereas almost 30% of the youth in the United States are estimated to be involved in bullying each year, either as a bully or as a victim. And whereas an estimated 160,000 students in kindergarten through 12th grade miss school every year, or every day, to fear of being bullied. And whereas bullying can take many forms, including verbal, physical, and most recently in cyberspace, and can happen in many places on and off school grounds. And whereas bullying is unacceptable behavior, and whereas it is the duty of all citizens, parents, guardians, families, and friends to help develop a proper behavior among our children and to provide them with the good examples. And whereas one simple act of kindness has the potential to generate others that will lift spirits and create goodwill. And whereas showing respect, patience, acceptance, and consideration will help build positive attitudes and a peaceful school, and therefore a more peaceful community. And whereas during the week of October 13th, 2013, the Caneland Community School District number 302 will be promoting kindness in Caneland. And therefore, I, Matt Brawley, on behalf of the Village of Montgomery, do hereby proclaim the week of October 13th through October 19th as Kick Week in the Village of Montgomery, and furthermore express the village's commitment to the education and prevention of bullying within our community and the promotion of kindness in Caneland. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. Take the roll.
Trustee Hines.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak. Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda this evening. Items A through F. I'll run down and then entertain a motion for approval. Minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting on September 17th. Minutes of the Village Board meeting of September 23rd. The minutes of executive session of that evening as well. Accounts payable through October 8th in the amount of $940,000 and change. Resolution 2013-021, designating signatories. And then item F, which is the 5-year lease agreement for the photocopier at the Public Works.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Take the roll.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Hines.
Just a quick comment, if I might, Matt. The email, there was an email this morning regarding the payment to Walmart, and as I understand, Justin, you're going to get us,
Justin's unaware of this yet.
oh, okay. We're going to find out the tax incentives when they expire with Walmart and how much is left to be paid. If we could, please.
Excellent.
Thank you.
We'd put them on the spot. All right, we don't have any items for separate action, so we'll go right into items for discussion this evening. Item A, MEDC prioritization exercise, and with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Thank you, Matt. There was an item in your packet. We've talked for a while, both at the village and MEDC level, on how it would be useful to both groups for the MEDC to know what the village's priorities are and where they'd like to see them focus their time, what areas of town, what types of retention versus attraction, industrial versus commercial. So staff here worked with the MEDC director on putting together an exercise, and it was in your packets there. We're not going to do it tonight. What I would ask is that you take it, and sometime between now and the end of October, the 31st, you do it and get it back to me, and then I will compile the information and bring it back to you in November. You can give 150 points total to the different areas. We require you to give at least 20 points to administration duties and at least 10 points to interagency cooperation duties. After that, you can divide up the remaining 120 points however you feel like. You can spread among all the categories. You could put it in one category. The more points you give to something, the higher priority it has for you. With that, I'd answer any questions you have. Otherwise, like I said, if you can get it to me by the end of October, I will bring it back to you in November with the results. And then we could share it with the MEDC going forward.
Excellent. Are there any questions of Jeff or staff on that this evening? Okay. We'll move on to item B this evening, which is the comprehensive plan, the sub-area plans. There was a memo from Jeff, and again, I'll ask Jeff for a brief summary of this.
Sure. This came up one of the past meetings, so I wanted to bring it back because we're at the point where we need to, if we're going to make any changes, we need to let the consultant know for the comp plan. Currently, we have three sub-area plans in the comp plan. One is the Eastern Gateway. That would focus on Montgomery Road, Douglas Road, and then the intersection of Route 30 and 34. That's the Eastern Gateway. There's a Western Gateway sub-area plan that would focus on the vacant, unannexed land on the western portion, so leading up to 47 out past Fairfield. And then the South Orchard Road corridor, which would focus on the undeveloped parcels around the Caterpillar facility. There you go. And south from there. It's, like I said, it's designated right now B2, M1, M2. We sometimes refer to some of that as the Conti shearing property, but there's some other property out there. So those are the three sub-area plans we currently have contracted with them to perform. I gave you 5 options on what we can do if you're interested for the downtown. One, we can say, leave it as it is, do those 3, study the downtown to the same level you're going to study all the other areas of the village where we don't have sub-area plans, since we had the TOD study not that long ago. That would just be the current condition. You could ask them to add a 4th sub-area plan with the downtown area being that, and that would be an additional cost of $8,000 then. You could ask them to add a 4th sub-area plan, but back down the scale of all 4 plans, so from the $8,000 level to $6,000 or less, so you could fit 4 plans within the $24,000 this board has already approved. You could ask them to possibly just do a review and update of the TOD plan at a lower cost than the $8,000 for a full-blown sub-area plan. I put an estimate of $4,000 to $6,000 in there, although I have not spoken to them about it until I saw which way this board wanted to go. And the last option I put down there was you could take out one of the current sub-area plans in exchange for the downtown plan. So, really, we're just looking for direction on how you want to proceed, so we can let House Levine know and they can move forward.
What year was the TOD plan?
2008?
2009, I just looked on it. 2009.
And nothing's really changed since 2009. We're coming out of a recession.
Could see the argument on both sides of that. No development, really, but the world has changed. But I see the point.
Now, this all rolls into the total comprehensive plan.
Correct.
I
They're
think
going to look at the entire village, but we've now asked them to take 3 areas and look at more in depth.
And then so if they didn't look in depth into this, could it still be inclusive of the comprehensive plan when we finalize it?
Yeah, I mean, they'll still look at the downtown with the rest of the village, too.
Okay.
Just on more superficial, more a high-level undertaking.
Jeff, if we were to add this sub-area, that additional money, would that fall under the grant money that we received for it?
No, because the grant money was 100,000, and we're already over that with the sub-area plans we added.
Okay.
So there would just be additional unbudgeted money would come out of reserves.
Well, for me, an extra 8,000 is probably not feasible. So either cut down on these or just do 3. So do 4 pretty good plans or pretty in-depth plans, or 3 solid plans. Makes sense. I don't think we have the reserves to do the 4th. Does everybody kind of generally agree with that?
I agree with that.
I think 3 or more good plans. We've already got the downtown.
Yeah.
It'll still be included, and it hasn't changed much, and it's not going in the real near future, so.
The Eastern Gateway, Western Gateway, and South Orchard Road corridor, have they ever gone under a planning process as to what is about to happen?
Not that I'm aware of. We did the northern part of the Orchard Road corridor at one point, but I don't think we've done the south part.
So really, the TOD plan with the downtown area, we're trying to get these other areas up to that level almost, or maybe a little bit higher than what that is currently?
That would
Okay.
be the goal, yes.
Engineer Walsh? you have
Yeah, we did do a corridor study on Montgomery Road, so that would have been on the east side of the village.
So if we do the 3 that we have, they're going to be in-depth of the same as the TOD, that level. And then if we can include the TOD in the total comprehensive plan with the other, we do have our 4.
I don't know for sure if it's going to be the same level of detail as the TOD study. I know that was a pretty cumbersome study, but yes, they'll all be. Okay.
Then I would,
It sounds like there's a consensus
for
to kind of
option
move forward
one,
with the
yeah.
3 plans and include the others, what I'm hearing. Okay.
Okay.
We will move forward with that.
All right, we'll move on to item C this evening, which is the 213 North Main Street building demolition. And with that, I'll turn it over to Engineer Wallers.
This is a follow-up from previous discussions. Just wanted to get direction from the board as to whether or not to proceed with the demolition in fiscal year 14 or for future year consideration. And currently, the cost of demolition is not in the budget. We had done a similar single-home demolition in another community and taken bids. The cost ranged from $15,000 to $30,000. For the purposes of budgeting, I would suggest using like $25,000. I think we would hopefully get better prices through competitive bidding, but you don't know that until you do it. So really, the question on the table is, do we proceed this year or wait until, for discussion in the next budget cycle? And I don't believe there's any safety issues or anything that makes it, important that we do the demolition right away.
Okay. Are there any
I'd say,
thoughts?
I'll say do it later on, not this year anymore.
Okay.
That's my opinion. Everybody has their own.
I would agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
It's not in the budget, let's try to get it into the budget.
If it's not a safety issue, if we can, I'd be willing to push it off even longer until someone shows.
15.
Until someone shows, that they want interest for development, and then maybe do it then. Or maybe as part of the sale to them, they have to incur that expense.
So not this year. That's the consensus.
That's the
So maybe
consensus.
try and fit funds in next year and see what happens. Okay, that was easy. All right, and lastly, the railroad quiet zone study, and
I can start that one.
I will ask Director Pootmans to start.
Thank you. This is a similar item in the sense that it's an issue that we've discussed at various times before, but has come up again, was the establishment of railroad quiet zones through downtown Montgomery. In this case, the issue is brought up in response to the construction that's happening out there and the changes that will happen to the K Street, soon-to-be Watkins Street Railroad crossing. So based on that and working with Engineer Wallers and his staff, we've resurrected a proposal that was brought before the board some time ago. It's been updated and is now current, and that's contained in your packet tonight to show the steps and the costs involved in a railroad quiet zone. I won't read through them verbatim, but it's basically divided into 3 subcategories, what we call a preliminary investigation or feasibility. That would be the first 2 items, as explained in the packet. We then would go to a design analysis, which would be the 2nd phase. And then finally, the 3rd phase would be an implementation plan. And Engineering Enterprises, Pete, has set up this agreement, so at any point, not any point, but there are certain milestones within that agreement. Basically, after the first 2 steps, phase 1, if we decided we didn't want to proceed, we could stop then and only pay for that portion of it. Similar with after the 3rd and 4th steps in the process, the design analysis, again, we'd have an option to stop there, or if we wanted to continue and go with the full cost. So as we stand today, the cost for the entire project would be just under $20,000. That does include some additional funds for traffic counts that would be necessary. And again, this, just so we're all aware, this does not include then the actual cost to design and build the features that may be necessary to put the quiet zone into place. So that could be, and we even hesitate to lay out what that might be because it's a wide range of improvements. We've seen some that are very simple, just delineators, and others that require much more new construction, all the way up to the addition of of additional horn systems. So we really can't get into what we think the level would be tonight. I don't think it would be fair to anyone because we just don't have enough information. Some points to consider about whether or not we move forward on this tonight are listed on the cover sheet of the packet. This is currently not budgeted in our FY14 budget. The study really can't be completed until the Watkins Street crossing is finished as part of the IDOT project. That is, their published date for completion of that project is August 2014. So we're hoping we can hit that, but it could be a little bit later than that, but at the earliest, end of summer next year. Again, the agreement is set up in 3 phases, so it can be ended at different times. It's certainly a benefit to us. And then, again, additional funds would be required to actually construct the improvements. So the quiet zone study would basically go through the feasibility, would analyze what could be done. If we chose to, would start the implementation process, which is notices and working with the railroad. And then, again, we'd have to budget additional funds to construct whatever the recommendation was coming out of that. So the question tonight is, how would you like us to proceed? We can either start this process, which again, we can't really do too much until Watkins Street is done, or we can add it to the FY15 budget proposal to be considered in next year's budget.
That would be staff's recommendation, is that we wait till fiscal year 15, put it in the budget as part of that process, because it has to be a study of current conditions, as Mike said, and so until the Watkins Street crossing is completed, we really can't move forward with it.
So you can't do anything, there's no advantage to doing it during the construction process. You can't really do it until it's done,
Right, that's my understanding, is that it needs to be of the completed.
the completed process.
Yeah.
There's no savings to.
It has to be based on actual conditions, not proposed conditions. So,
Any potential construction changes that would result at that Watkins cross with this quiet zone should have been done in the original Phase 1 study for 30 and 31, that new intersection, correct? If we were going to do anything at that point?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
We're rerouting, or we're changing the ramps to
Right,
get from 31 to 30.
right.
If we go through a quiet zone study and something, they say no, well, first off, can the railroad just say, can they say no, we're not going to do it?
The railroad certainly has a voice in this process. I would ask Pete possibly to comment on how much of a leverage they have.
They have a set procedure that you go through, and there's 3 agencies that are involved. It's the Burlington Northern Railroad, the Federal Railroad Administration, and the ICC. And what you do is you rate each intersection to determine whether it's eligible or not to have enough safety points to qualify for a quiet zone. Once it's determined that it meets those criteria, the railroad can't say no. So it's a set process that you go through, and it's a combination of a lot of things, but it's basically to ensure that at the basic level that automobiles can't short circuit the warning devices that are in place. So a lot of times you'll see quiet zones established where you have extended medians or flexible delineators, things like that. But there, as Mike said, there are all different types of additions that can be made, quad gates, selective horn blasts that are more minimal in terms of directional. And all that is part of the process of evaluation and determination. And so usually it's not the railroad that would say that it's infeasible, it would be the community that may not want to spend the money to go through the process of updating those safety features.
Okay. And then back to my original question. If we're going through, if we're changing the way that the ramps and stuff are set up now, potentially, we may have to do some more construction and more changing of the intersections once this study is done. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
And
possible.
so realistically, as far as for efficiency and economic purposes, we probably should have done that on the Phase 1 study that occurred with the ramps.
When the roadway phase one was done, the ramp phase one.
Well, I understand that the Phase 1 was done in 1997, and it wasn't even contemplated, quiet zones at that time weren't even contemplated. IDOT's goals and objectives and the railroad's goals and objectives are different than the village, for example. So the quiet zone is kind of a new addition to things that are trying to be accomplished. So IDOT doesn't look at the implementation of a quiet zone when they look at a railroad crossing. Their main criteria is safety, and so, and similar to, the railroad. So that's what they're focusing on. We will take a look at the design of Watkins to see if there's anything that we might do to enhance our ability to get the quiet zone in the future, and I think that's maybe where you're going before they construct it. The only thing I can tell you from doing several of these, you can kind of get ahead of yourselves a little bit with this stuff too. So we'll be we'll do that, but we'll be careful not to design something that may not be necessary as well.
Thank you.
When a quiet zone is implemented, does the engineer of the train, is it up to him to not blow? I mean,
Well, he is then directed not to routinely, like right now when they go through town, they routinely at a certain point sound the horn. The duration is supposed to be a specified time, but oftentimes the engineer that's operating the train may vary that. Once the quiet zone is established, then they wouldn't do the routine blast. But if they saw somebody on the track, for example, they would still have the ability to sound the horn. So it doesn't preclude them from blasting the horn, but it doesn't make it as a routine.
Okay.
Pete, since you said that you've done a lot of these studies, now the Elburn one is completely different because that's a passenger train. It's right through the middle of the town. It's completely, to me, it's completely different than this one because they stop and all that stuff. For this $20,000 phase, if we put it in next year's budget, you've done the other ones. What are the costs of the other ones?
See, and I think that's where it gets to be a premature discussion, because until you go through the diagnostics, which is just the first phase, and I think if I recall, the first phase, which was items 1 and 2, was about $5,800. I think once we have that part done, then we can have a more meaningful discussion with cost, because you can get ahead of yourself on the cost issues as well. And
Any of them been under $1 million?
Oh, yeah. The cost is well, I mean, it can be well under that, for sure. See, and that's what happens, you'll get into like, we also have high-speed commuter or passenger trains that comes through here as well. And one of the things you do at the diagnostic is to make sure that the signals are capable of handling high-speed and low-speed trains, and are, because they have different levels of actuation for the signal. If you have to go back and upgrade those signal actuators, oftentimes that can be a big cost. So those are things you find out when you actually get into the diagnostics, and those are sometimes the costs that are difficult to overcome. But the ones that we've done have been, well under $1 million for sure, and that's why I don't like to get the discussion started, because they can be very small costs. We've done in some communities that were, $5,000 to accomplish the quiet zone. But it can be more than that, depending on what's needed. And every intersection is different, and it's also different because you have businesses that are affected at each intersection that you have to deal with and make sure you're treating, correctly.
I was under the understanding, and this is like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, that it was $1 million. Mainly, it's not a Terry Avenue where you put up some yellow lines to make sure people don't go over or whatever. That because there's two here, not just one. I mean, it would be crazy to do one when the next one's just down the road because they're going to blow the horn in either one. So you got to do both, right?
Right, that's correct. Both of them have to qualify.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I just understood it as being over $1 million.
No. I would be surprised if that was the case. That's why I would think our best course of action would be to go through the initial diagnostics meetings with the federal folk and the railroad folks, and then come back to the board with some preliminary estimates of cost, And then I think you could make a lot better decision as to whether to proceed with the rest of the study at that point.
Pete, go right ahead. You guys go. With the conversations we've had about a metro station coming here and all of that conversation, would that also impact this? Would we be redoing the quiet zones if that were to come to fruition? I mean, because that's a lot more traffic.
Well, right, but I mean, the initial meetings we've had with Metra is, I would think that by the time we get to that point, there'll be so many other changes that you would just evaluate it as part of the construction of the Metra station and contend with it then. I wouldn't want to wait that long to, if you want the quiet zone, I sure wouldn't want to wait that long, because I don't think, we'll be managing pedestrians and other things at that point, but I think there's ways to do it. And at that point, you'll have the access to federal funds as well. And I would think you'd want to include those improvements in it, and that could be discussed then.
Kind of along those same lines, when they go to put the third rail in, let's say that goes in probably long before we actually get a station. How will that negatively, positively, or one impact the other?
Right, and at the last update that we got on the Phase 1 that's being done right now, the indication that we got from Metra was that a third rail may not be needed. And I think they were still in the process of evaluating it. And that's a huge issue for cost as well as complication of the intersection. But I'm not certain as we sit here, based on what we heard, at least at the last update. Now, that could change because the Phase 1's not been finalized, but that was the indication we got, that they may not need a third rail.
Well, that's good news.
Are the high-speed trains that they're currently working on, the tracks between, I think, Chicago and St. Louis, do they come through here?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I know we've had a barrage of questions on this. I think we're all just trying to be extremely responsible with the money. I mean, if we do move forward with the study, that this is an actual project that could happen, or if we do the study and then things change in a year, we will have wasted that money. So we're just trying to vet it, but.
I'm sorry, and maybe I misunderstood 4 or 5 years ago, and I'll talk to you after the meeting on this, but I can't see a $20,000 study, and you say it's possibly done as low as $5,000. That doesn't make sense, Pete. I mean, if you're doing a $20,000 study, it's going to cost you more than $20,000 to do it, I would think, right?
Well, let me just say that you're dealing with the Federal Railroad Administration,
Right.
Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad, and the ICC. It's not that simple.
No, you can't work with these guys. I mean, they won't even,
It's
20 minutes of block a track, and they don't care, and
It's-
maybe a handcart go by. It's just, it's
a
almost
lot of
ridiculous.
working through the system, and it can be frustrating. But again, my recommendation is, if you're at all interested, get through the diagnostics phase, then at least you'll have some of the questions that you're specifically answering, Trustee Lee, we can answer. But right now, until you have the joint meeting, you can't really, they have information that we don't have access to, and we need to get through that.
And would you have to wait to have that until after construction, or?
Well, we could find out, Mayor Browley, it's unusual that you would, as Mike said, you're supposed to have physical traffic counts on the intersection or on the crossing. Well, we wouldn't have those for Watkins. Now, whether they would accept projected traffic, I don't know for sure because we've never done one. We could look into that and be happy to do that. So, but that's the part that's a little, gray because we've never done one on a proposed intersection or crossing.
Okay.
We might be able to sneak one in right now if maybe one of those entities is shut down with the government shutdown. I'm just trying to be fiscally wise.
All right,
Would
so
you
we
like
have
us-
direction?
Would you like us to investigate that and bring the item back, or?
I think it's important, but I don't think that'll sway the board one way or the other. If it's an important project and we have funding for it, I think we should move forward with it. If it's something that we should hold off on, we can hold off on.
The consensus, we include this as part of the next budget process?
Can I make a comment as well, just by way of background to put a frame on this topic, it has come up several times at our board meetings. On my trustee webpage, on the homepage, I have 50 topics. And those topics are sorted by the interest in each topic. And of the 50 topics, this quiet zone issue is number 7. It's climbed from last, where everything starts, all the way up to number 7. There have been 3,000, as of tonight, 3,159 visits to that topic on that webpage. Now, maybe all those people are from some other town, but I doubt it. I think that there's some strong citizen interest in this topic. And I think there's another angle to it as well. I think if we can make the downtown more livable, we're more likely to accomplish our transit-oriented development plan. We're more likely to see the resurgence in residential property investment that we're hoping for. And I think that the residential property development paves the way for commercial development. So if we look at this in a bigger picture, it may be one of the baby steps that we take toward really revitalizing downtown as a place to invest residential dollars. And I think for those of us who've campaigned in these neighborhoods by the tracks, I remember having to stop introducing myself at someone's doorstep because we couldn't hear each other as the train horn went by. So it's a topic that keeps coming back to us, and I look forward to the day when we can truly address it.
I would say at this point,
Do it in the 15 budget.
yeah, we try and find a way to fit at least the first phase of this, the first 2 task items in the FY15, and then we'll be able to talk about it at that time, whether or not it makes it in there or not. But I think the consensus is that this could help. I mean, it's going to help the people that live there, so it's an important project, it seems like, for most of the board, so it's just a matter of finding funding for these capital projects, so.
I agree.
Yeah, I think Stan's point is really valid about it could impact economic development in the downtown area as well as residential down the road. Okay.
All right. With that, we'll move on. Is there any new or unfinished business to come before the board this evening? All right, hearing none. We have future meetings listed on the agenda. I won't run through those. Then we'll move on to executive session to discuss collective negotiating matters pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C2, and then also to discuss the employment of an employee pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C1. With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Take the roll.
Trustee Hines.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Moved. Second. Take the roll, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Bond?
Why
Yes.
wait?
Trustee Spurlock?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Excellent.